Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of The Conversation. Today we're pleased to welcome Shamin Mehrotra, Chief Officer for School Ecosystem and Mental Health, whose work centers on creating school environments where student well-being supports inclusive learning. We're also honored to have Mr. Rais Sheikh, two-term MLA from Bhiwandi East, who brings a vital policymaker's perspective and has played a key role in shaping educational reform at the state level. I welcome both of you. I'd want to start the conversation with you, sir, Rai sir. Ki as a politician, you're always in the hot seat and talking about politics and policies. Is it refreshing to step away from policy debates and have a more personal conversation today?
Yeah, it's always very refreshing, basically. And to talk about special needs children, to talk about Ummeed, talk about inclusive and education, I think it's really great. And through this podcast, I wish to reach out to as many people as possible, create awareness about what is the need of these children and how government should intervene, how government is intervening. So I hope it's going to be a good, informative conversation.
Right. We hope the same. And Shamin, I know because I work closely with you. I know how you often prefer the work that we do speak for itself, and you not face the cameras. But today we've brought you here. So would you like to share how you're feeling and also what motivates you to do the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so firstly, I want to say thank you for having me here because I think, sharing the space with Rais by and people who are so invested in this space, people who can make changes is amazing. And sure, yes, I think work speaks for itself for sure, but I think more and more people need to start talking. The fact that we're having this dialogue, the fact that we're talking about inclusive education, the fact that we have change makers, policy makers, all part of the discussion is great. And I think more and more conversation is needed to get the word out there. So,
Yeah, right. Yeah, and because we work in the school spaces, I would want to start the conversation with your school experiences. How has your experiences in back when you were a student? How were
so I think I was, Tazim, really fortunate to be in a school that at that time didn't say it was inclusive. But it was in many different ways. And I think, the memory that stays for me from school is every year we used to have what we called an educational tour. It was compulsory, it was mandatory to be at these places. And I think I've made my closest friends in those, spaces. They were 3 days, sometimes a week. All within India. But I think just getting to know people in a space that wasn't a classroom. Just the fact that you're not focusing on academics. They called it educational tours, but of course, everybody knows, when you're going with classmates, it's a fun time, it's a fun space to be. So I think just the fact that, those kinds of things were encouraged in the school, it wasn't just hardcore academics and only about marks. So it was great. Like I actually had a really good. I have some really fun memories from school. Like I said, my closest friends are from school. We're still in touch. So it was great.
great? Thank you so much for sharing. And sir, how was your experiences of school?
I mean, of course, every school experience is very unique. I went to a very middle class school. It was a very good English medium school with very good teachers, but mostly academic. And there was no concept of special need or, you know, if you're a slow learner or if you have certain issues. I don't think they were identified or they were even there was any intervention for that. But otherwise, for us, the school was really great. It was a good English medium school. It's the foundation that, it's a foundation of our life over there. We had fantastic friends, fantastic teachers. But from the perspective of special needs or from the perspective of individual attention, these schools were not, to be very
Yeah.
honest. Very basic infrastructure. But still, at that time, our teachers were very good. I mean, they could understand or maybe focus on each child. It was a large school with a large batch. I mean, fun time. I mean, a lot of friends we made, a lot of things we learned in the school.
I can see both of you making a lot of friends in school spaces and yeah, keeping those friendships alive. And next, what I want to know is that was your school experiences, and you've seen things move from your school experiences to your both of your children's school experiences. Would you want to talk more about how it was for your children and how you navigated that as a parent?
So I think for me, it's been so my son goes to the same school that I went to. So it's a little bit more of the same in some senses. And now the school that he goes to says it's an inclusive school. So I think they've been very forthcoming of taking children with disabilities, taking children from diverse backgrounds, and they've been doing a great job. Of course, when you think of inclusion and inclusive education, it's a continuum. So it's not like you reach a point where you say, okay, now we've reached the end point. It keeps continuing. So I think with the school that Ayan is in. They're very open to dialogue, so they may not necessarily know everything to do. But I think, if you have a conversation with them to say this is the kind of support needed, or maybe we shouldn't try that, or maybe we should try this, they're very open to dialogue. So I think that is amazing, and I think that's what's changing, because my background is in mental health, and I work with a lot of parents who come to me, and oftentimes they come to me and say, आप स्कूल से बात कर लो, like मुझे समझ में नहीं आ रहा, मैं टीचर को क्या बोलूँ, स्कूल को क्या समझाऊँ. So I think that's the whole change, where some schools are open to having that conversation. And there are more and more schools like that. So it's a good place to be. Of course, we have a long way to go, but I think, yeah, for me, with Ayan's experience, it's been pretty positive.
Yeah, and for you, sir?
For my daughter, it's been a challenge. I mean, my daughter's gone through 4 preschools and third academic school. So, in spite of having all the resources, it's a big challenge. But I should say the preschools that she has gone, small preschools were there, both contributed immensely. From the sensory issues to her motor skills, the small preschools really understood. Then she shifted to another preschool, a very large IB, but she couldn't adjust. Then she shifted to another school where she stayed from preschool to now 8th standard. But again, now situation is, as schools grow, as schools have more children, they stop focusing on individual children. So now
Right.
again she's gone to another school where it's a smaller class, more focused. See, the challenge with a special need child and parents, from the parents' perspective, is that kids as they grow, they bully children. They don't understand why a particular child is having a special need. So that's the biggest challenge. You can make adults understand, you can make the teachers understand, you can make the environment very acceptable, but unless the peers, the children who are with our children are not sensitive, they don't feel inclusive.
And I think they should be taught about like differences.
No, it
Differences.
cannot. It cannot happen in the higher class. Like today, Pusha's going to another school where I read the literature. School has a lot of focus from the first standard for inclusive child. So if you inculcate those values, even in the best of the best IBs, if you don't inculcate those values in a junior class, you don't expect a 9-year old or a 10-year-old to behave like an inclusive. Sports is a big problem. Your child can't participate. They cannot wait. Like speed, project work is a very big challenge. You have an inclusive child, they cannot wait. They have a certain speed. So these are challenges, but with support of everybody, we could overcome that. And the biggest strength is my daughter. I mean, she's very strong. But for a special need child, it's a challenge. If you're rich or you're poor, it's a challenge.
And when you see these challenges in the system, because you work in the system as a policy maker, what does a story like both of your journeys, and especially because you have a personal story and know the challenges firsthand, like what does that tell you about the gaps and opportunities in our current education system?
Our current system doesn't really acknowledge also. It's only because I'm an MLA and my daughter was a special need. A lot of focus came in. EIC happened, early intervention center we have. But if you come to the core of the policy making, they still look at it as a handicap disabled policy. I mean, the policymakers think like this, that you have a handicapped child, we need to give him 1,500 rupees per month to sustain. Nobody thinks from the perspective of including the child or making them, acceptable. 2-3 landmark things that have happened is we could make this huge facility of 40,000 square feet for early intervention. That has changed at least the atmosphere around the BMC. But we could not link that center with another dispensary, or we could not link it to our education system. Recently, I had a meeting where the early intervention center now will be linked to the education department. My vision was to link everything. This is BMC. If you talk about government is still not figuring it out. I mean, you don't have any facility for therapy beyond, I think, even Mumbai, Thane doesn't have it.
Yeah,
So
very
there's a
limited.
huge work that needs to be done. What government has done is at least two major policy that happened during my tenure is now disabled people have reservation in education and employment, which is enforced. Earlier was there, but it was not enforced. So now we're enforcing that. Second is now we have reservation for orphans. It's an offbeat thing, but these are vulnerable sections of society. We're trying to reach out. Government of Maharashtra created a department for disabled people now, but it is toothless. It doesn't have any budget. Unless the mainstream education system acknowledges this, and Mumbai has to be the leader, but we'll still have not reached very far in that.
Yeah, I know there are amazing policies like RPWD is rights of person with disabilities, RT right to education is there, and other NEP is also there. But yeah, implementation is somewhere where I see there is a gap. Shamin, because you work directly with Sir also, and what is something like one critical thing, single most critical ask from government or the policy makers that you think can bring the most essential for the system to make?
So I think there's a couple of things. I mean, from what Rais is saying, I think being a parent of a child, when he's talking about being a parent of a child with disability, and we talk about inclusion, inclusion is not just about being invited to the party, right? It's about wanting to dance. It's about wanting to feel that sense of belonging. It's about wanting to be okay to be vulnerable in front of your peers. It's not about just pretending to be something that you're not, or it's not about sharing a classroom. Everyone else is doing something else. This child is sitting on the corner doing a coloring sheet, which is irrelevant. So I think it's firstly, I think that needs to happen, and a lot of that is a mindset shift. So while some policies are there and some of the policies are great, but I think the policies, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they're more frameworks.
Right.
So the implementation, I think it's interpreted very differently by different people. And so then it gets implemented, if at all, very differently by different people within the system. And I think that's where the gap comes, because the policies tell you what largely as a thought is meant to happen, but then how it's supposed to happen is not actually put down onto paper. Also, the enforcement, like you were saying, the policy existed, but then how do you ensure that it's being implemented? So I think that's the kind of support that we need to start looking at. And I guess, a large part is that, I often feel that, most systems are made for most people for most of the time. We really need to start thinking about how all systems can be made for all people all of the time. And I think that is something that will take that just needs a mindset shift. You're not necessarily, the way we look at our systems is systems happen, and then when there's disability, there's diversity, any sort of difference, we're trying to fit these people into the existing system. I think we need to figure out systems where we don't need to fit people. People should just be part of that system. The fact is, right now, policies are emerging, people are talking because we're trying to fit people in. But I think that needs to change. That whole fitting into a box is what really needs to go.
I should feel belong there, right? Whether it be a government school or a private school, any classroom, right? All students should feel belong in the classrooms. So, what do you think will empower the systems to bring that change in the classrooms?
See, movies like Tare
Sitare
Zameen
Zameen
Par
Par.
or Sitare Zameen Par have created some awareness. But unless the policy makers sit down and understand the issue, there's a difference between disabled people
Mhm.
and people with special needs. I mean, they don't understand. And especially the education departments, if you're talking about education, unless the teacher training programs include this, unless the policymakers or people who implement, who are the administrators, they are made aware about these things, they will never realize. Two movies cannot change our mindset. So our focus now is like, I took a meeting with the BMC, and now we are trying to link the education department with early intervention center. We are asking for screening of every child. We are asking for training programs to include inclusiveness. None of the training programs now talk about inclusiveness. And when I talk to policymakers, they're saying, if we are not able to take care of normal children, how can we do this? So that mindset has to change. And the numbers, people feel, there is this one child who physically looks disabled, is the only person who's got disability. They don't understand a lot of disabilities are not visible.
Yeah.
So that is the challenge. We are trying to work it out. We need more ambassadors, more people talking about. Like, I take my daughter to, big programs where people understand that, there are special need people and they need special, way to handle things. So I think mere making policies will not happen unless the implementing body, which is our administrators, our teachers, school managements, are made to understand.
Yeah.
And there should be a more stricter push, legislative push to implement. Like, I'll tell you one incident. Because we moved into a building, and that building didn't have anything on the ground floor for special need people or senior citizens. We made a policy that now you have to have certain ramps, you have to have water, you have to have, access free. So these are policy interventions and enforcements that need to be done.
Net, we need more people like him.
Yeah,
basically.
in the system.
that's the-
You should actually keep orientation for elected representatives.
Yeah, I think people in the system should be, firstly, they should be aware of all this, and then because they're representing so many people. Yeah, and I believe both Ummeed and your social initiative, which is Ehtisab, have collaboratively worked together for some time now, and I would want to know from both of you about how that looked like and what it made possible in the school system.
I mean, so I can start and Rais I can add, but so firstly, I said I think just the value of someone like him sort of, talking about issues like this really brings gravity to the situation. So firstly, thank you. I think it's really appreciated. We at Ummeed, when we're trying to do, so we do an inclusion fellowship. It's called the Ummeed Inclusion Fellowship Program, and it's a 2-year program where we actually place who we call inclusion champions in under-resourced schools. And so one of the schools we had worked with was the Mohammad Umar Rajab School, which is also supported by Ehtisab Foundation. And I think the possibilities are unimaginable. I think that is where, because, we talk about teacher training, like you said, our B.Ed curriculums, for instance, don't teach teachers how to be inclusive. Like, teachers teach the way they've been taught. And oftentimes, a lot of teachers have gone through education which has not been inclusive. And, you look back and think, main to badi ho gayi, I've turned out pretty okay. So you assume that, that's how you will, work with other children, not sort of recognizing that so much diversity exists. And we've spoken a lot to teachers, and lots of research has been done where teachers are saying it's not like we don't want to include kids. We just don't know how to include kids. So I think some part of it is also supporting teachers to understand how to make this happen. But there is also a flip side, because I know that when we go into do training for teachers, teachers oftentimes look at us and say, "वापस आ गए." Like, ये लोग वापस आ गए, अभी बोलने वाले ऐसे करो, वैसे मत करो, ये भी करो, वो भी करो. And there's already so much that they have to do. So one of the things, for instance, we do is we work with the teacher's mental health. Because, even when you're on an airplane, they tell you to wear your oxygen mask first before helping anybody else. And I really feel we need to support teachers before they can support the kids, because it's not like they don't want to do it. They really want to support, but sometimes I also need to know how to do it. And there's also that if I know how to do it, but how do I take care of myself while also doing it? So I think it's complex. It's not as easy as just saying, let's go do 10 teacher trainings and then they'll figure it out. But But I think, again, I'm going back to the fact that it starts with a mindset. So when you have someone like Rais by leading an initiative, um, allowing us to engage with a school and with a system, work with the teachers, talk to them, build their capacity, work with the kids, I think it just becomes, incredible in terms of what is possible. Like, I know in Umar Rajab now they have an inclusion committee. So where the idea was always there, but again, it was like, we don't know how to necessarily do this. Now they have some ideas of what they can do differently. There's someone who's taking, charge of doing it even after the fellowship is over. So lots of things become possible. Like, I keep using the word magic happens, because sometimes just to change that one child's school experience, I mean, it's not about the marks. We're not saying that, maybe from 50% he'll get a 90%, but this kid likes going to school. I mean, when Raisbai just said that Busha has gone to a new school, or his child has gone to a new school, my immediate thing was, did she have fun? Because it is so important to go and enjoy, your classroom. You're in school for a large part of the day, and that is a school that then becomes inclusive, right? That welcomes you, that makes you feel wanted, that a place that you want to go to.
Yeah.
Um,
And how has it been for you, sir?
See, Umar Rajab is a new school, and it was born out of the need of having an English medium school for the underprivileged who could not afford fees in a convent school or a big school. So when Umar Rajab was conceived, and we took BMC as a partner, and we adopted a school, and we started a new school, the first thing I said is that this school has to be inclusive. I mean, that was one of the core policy. We were fortunate that Abuzar, her husband, was my friend, and we got Ummeed as a partner. But look at what it has done to that community. Our children are so developed mentally. I was taking rounds in a garden which we developed, and there was this child. Her hands were not developed, and she's in. You must be knowing the child. Her face was very different, and both the parents were sitting in the garden and thinking, "Kya we have this child. What to do with the child?" And I just picked her up and I said, "Umar Achabao," and we gave her admission. Today, that child is very normal. I mean, of course, she's not normal in the sense that she cannot write, but as she said, she is very happy going to the school, and she participates in almost everything. Not only that, there are many special needs children in Umar Achab, and it's not that these special needs children, but sometimes even the normal children need support.
Yeah.
Like, there are a lot of slow learners, people who are children who are aggressive. Now, in my own family, now we have 3 children who are special needs. Not only one, my daughter, other people also. So there is a huge need to look at this. And Umar Rajab is, of course, a unique example. We're all very happy. It's been a long relationship with Ummeed, but these programs and these associations and partnerships have to be replicated.
Yeah, I think it becomes a school which shows that what things are possible. Like a child who was not even, the same example that you shared, the child who was not even given admission in any school, when that child is going to school and enjoying being there. And that's what I think both of you shared in the beginning of the conversation about your school experiences, that you liked going to school, you enjoyed making friends. I believe school is not only about academics, right? There's so many things beyond academics that can that happen in school spaces. And
So in fact,
yeah.
Azim, there's been research done that has actually spoken to a whole lot of people between the ages of 35 to 50. And that's like a good 20 years after you're out of school. And they've asked the top 5 things that you remember from your school experience. And the top 2 are the teachers that were nicest to me and the teachers who were the meanest to me. Because it's not about the marks at the end of the day. I mean, today, no one is asking us how many marks we've got. We're working in this space. But when we talk about school, it really, what stays with you is how someone made you feel. And that becomes critical. So when we talk about inclusion, it's really about the feeling that you're left with as a parent, as, the child in that system. And, like you're saying, it's not just about disability. Even, typically developing children, I often say that, when I say it's a mindset shift, teachers often think that, this is one more thing we need to do, because I have 2-3 kids in my class who are different now, mujhe sab kuch alag karna padega. And I keep saying it's not about doing more, it's just about doing it different. Like when I tell a teacher to use a visual schedule, for instance, of course it's going to help those 2 3 kids, who have diverse needs, but it's going to help every single kid in the class. Who wouldn't want to see pictures around their classroom to make things
Yeah.
easier? Who wouldn't want to get instructions that are simpler? So I think it's just the understanding of how we even articulate what inclusive education means and what it is, because it's not a whole lot doing more. It's just doing different.
Right. And I know that you've been working in school spaces for a long time now. I'd want to know a story maybe that has stayed with you or is helps you, like on days when you don't feel like working. You go back to those stories and that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the stories is from Ummeed itself. Like we have a person who started coming to us when he was 7 years old. He has muscular dystrophy, wheelchair bound. Came to us as a child for different kinds of therapy, got mental health support, got various other therapies. Actually, has ended up graduating, doing a master's, and now he works with us. He's part of the team. So I think sometimes just looking back to some of those stories just makes you feel that the effort you're putting in is worthwhile. Because you don't sometimes get to see the benefit on a daily basis. It's not like baking a cake where you bake the cake, you've tasted it, it tastes great, and it's not like that. Sometimes you see these effects, the ripple effects, they happen years later, but then to really hold on to some of those just makes you feel it's an upward battle, but it's probably worth the battle.
Yeah, I think seeing the change, it takes a lot of time to see that change, and you need to have that patience to see that change. And it's right. Like even if you make an impact in one child's life, make their
Yeah.
school life be like their school experience great. I think that's a good job, great done. So, sir, I'd want to know from you also if you have any story that makes you do what you do.
In my career, the biggest point has been the early intervention center.
Mhm.
From not having a center for poor people and struggling today, we have a 40,000 square feet facility where there are 5,600 children who come and take therapies. With now we have 2 schools under our umbrella. We are running 2 schools. We have a school in Bhiwandi, which is now more inclusive. So all this makes you feel that you know you've really made an impact, and it is growing. We, I mean, I as an elected member, I'm trying to bring this thought in everything that I do, in every policy that I make. Like if you come to Bhiwandi now, we have 18,000 children who are underprivileged. So we at least have started identifying these special need people. Now in Bhiwandi, we had a small camp. We brought in 150 children who needed help. Now some of them are getting therapy help. Some of them are getting surgeries done. Some of them are getting their shoes done. So it's a huge thing. I mean, there's a huge problem. There's a huge gap which needs to be filled. So all this makes you feel that yes, you're on the track.
Mhm. Great. Yeah, and because you work, both of you work in the space of education, and right now inclusion is becoming more of like a buzzword and a trendy thing that everybody wants to do, and it can sometimes lead to tokenism, right? A lot of schools pretend to be, oh, we're inclusive and we'd say all of those things, but in actual, when you see there's no support for children in inside. What are your thoughts about it, like the inclusion being a buzzword and a trendy topic?
See, first of all, the schools in public school, they don't pretend because they know they don't have. Okay. I've seen in the biggest names, the IBs that they call themselves, inclusiveness is only a title. I've experienced with my child at 3 schools. I mean, this is a third school. So those earlier 2 schools, one of them was definitely not inclusive and we had to take her out. This one school, she was there almost for 8 years now. And I've seen that school. When I went to that school and I took admission, it was truly inclusive. In fact, I remember when Bushra took admission in that school, we had to send a maid in the earlier school. This school insisted, don't send a maid. We'll take care. And they took care of her till the 7th standard. Problem started in the 8th standard when the school became very big. When the school becomes greedy, I mean, you promise a 10 student class and then you bring it to 17, and then you have that big numbers, and then you have the noises, and you have those problems related to a large school. And I'm saying inclusiveness can only come if you inculcate that value into a child in his first formative years, or else you can't have an inclusive school. It's not about teachers, it's not about infrastructure, it's not about management. There's another stakeholder, which is the children. And unless you do that, you cannot have.
I agree. I totally agree. And I think, just to add to that, I think how children become sensitive depends a lot on the adults around them. Like, I was once observing a classroom of a great school, inclusive school. Set up was such that kids were sitting around a table. This was a second grade classroom. And they were doing a project. And I know you mentioned project work sometimes becomes tricky, right? When you're working with diverse needs. And so they were sitting 4 or 5 kids around this table and were doing something. I don't even recall what it was, but clearly this one child was struggling. And the teacher, with all her best intentions, said, "Beta, don't worry, I'll sit with you after. Right now, let me finish with the rest." Now, the thing is, she thought she was being really nice. She thought she's giving her extra time. She's waiting after school. It's one-on-one time, all of that. But the message it sent to the rest of those kids was that it's okay to leave this kid out. So it's also, how do we sensitize other children, because a lot of children will learn from what they see and hear around them. So I think as adults, we also need to be a little bit more mindful in terms of how do we do inclusion. It's not about doing anybody a favor. Inclusion is a two-way street. We learn as much from each other in a school system, as other stakeholders, as people working in the space, as teachers, educators, all of that. um, so I think people have to move away from this fact that I'm doing someone a favor by allowing them in my school or allowing them in my system. Um, in between, I was in a class where we were talking about disability, and this one child said, "Oh, auntie, I allow this person to be my friend." And for a second, I was also taken aback, because I'm like, "Listen, how about the fact that she's allowing you to be her friend?" And of course, we had to talk about it in a way that also made sense, because I think, again, this comes from oftentimes parents, where it comes from a space of, poor kid, like, why don't you take her out? Why don't you be her friend? Why don't you be his friend? So I think it is about how we also articulate what we mean when we say we're truly inclusive, because it is a buzzword. And I have, like Rais by saying, there are many schools who say they're inclusive, but if you go to those schools, for them, inclusion is sharing the same physical space, that everyone is in the same classroom. Then what is happening, no one is really
A
so
lot of times
concerned
you're
about.
even giving admission.
Absolutely.
We're inclusive because we
And
give
there is
admission.
no legal
Absolutely.
way of certifying schools.
Yeah, exactly. That's my next question for Shamin. Ki, do you believe that there's a framework where the government or the policymakers can effectively partner with the private schools to ensure that they're held accountable? If they're saying we're inclusive, that they're held accountable for being inclusive.
So I don't know whether there's any specific way. But the fact is that when the government partners, say, like, Umar Rajab or Ehtasab is partnering with Ummeed, we can see the change that's happened, right? When you think of the admission policy for them, all kids are welcome, teacher training is happening, everyone seems to be happy. It's a great environment to be in. How can we do more of this? Again, I think those are things that we also have to figure out, because I think one of the challenges, for instance, for us at Ummeed, is not that we don't want to do a lot more work, but sometimes just getting in through the door, like the process for engaging with the government, sometimes becomes hard. And it requires time and it requires effort. And sometimes you feel, okay, should I just do my other work? Like, let me access what I can access versus trying to sort of figure something else out. So I think that becomes a problem, that it's not like, like we're saying, it's not like teachers don't want to include children with special needs. It's not even like other organizations don't want to work to make it a better space. But I think it's just how does it come together that becomes a challenge.
No, but I think the foundation is now laid with, I can see a change. At least people have started listening. And with the new education policy, I think some framework will walk in. Because government is becoming more sensitive now. I think time has come.
Yeah.
Yeah, we hope
Fingers crossed.
for
Yeah.
a same time where people are held accountable. If they're saying ki we are inclusive, that means that they're providing support to children in the classrooms. Shamin, I also wanted to talk about ki Ummeed is building capacity. We build capacity of people and equipping others with skills to multiply the impact far beyond what we could do alone. So you talk more about that.
I mean, I think it's necessary. I think some part of why we've started doing some of the things we've been doing is because when we go to schools and we try to see what can be done, there seems to be a limitation in terms of how to do it. So I think some part of it is also content knowledge. And like I said, that often teachers teach the way they've been taught. So we have to teach them different to be able to do different. I think one of the things that we should try and focus on our energies on is also working with pre-service teachers, because I think a lot of when we do teacher training, these are already teachers. When you're asking them to do different things, oftentimes you're asking them to unlearn and then relearn something different. Because the B.Ed programs don't have a lot of information in terms of how do you work with diversity. Even the special education, when you look at the B.Ed program, it's a very specialized program.
For a specific
So
disability.
yeah, so either you will know how to work with visual impairment or hearing impairment or what they call multiple disability. It doesn't all tie in together. Like, what if there's a child who has a visual impairment but also has autism? Or what if there's a child who has a learning disability and also has, say, ADHD or muscular dystrophy? It could be anything. And I think that is something that when we talk about training, that's something that there needs to be a significant push for, that how do we work with that in the curriculum when teachers are becoming teachers.
I think when
Yeah.
they're in pre-service.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's important also because pre-service is very important. That's going to be the next generation of teachers, but also for the teachers who've already been in school systems. Like, for example, somebody who has been in school systems or in classrooms for 25, 30 years, then going, like, I remember from my fellowship experiences going into to professional for teachers were experienced, and they would look at me as a child who has come into my classroom where I have been teaching for 30 years and telling me to do things differently. I think that's something where
I mean, that happens not just in school spaces. That's, I think, that just happens in every space.
Every
Like you
space.
feel that when you're older, you feel, been there, done that, got the ticket. So that is a mindset shift. Having said that, I know a lot of people who've been there for many, many years, who are very open to doing things differently. So I also feel it is about how it's articulated, because I think many times teachers get the sense that we're saying that you're doing things wrong and now you need to do it right. Um, and I think part of what we try to say is you're not doing it wrong, but can we also add an element which is different? Because, we have to recognize that the education system in our country and everywhere else too is not the highest in terms of monetarily paying people, right? So a lot of people choose to be in this space because they want to do something significant, they want to give back, they want to be supportive. It's really just trying to support them in terms of figuring out how to do that best.
so from your perspective, from working in the systems and policy, so what do you think about this model, the model where you build capacity of people who are working already in the systems or the communities and the professionals, as opposite to simply providing direct services?
I think we should build capacities. Obviously, it's very important that we we train or we reach out to maximum teachers, all stakeholders. See, ultimately the aim is to build a society which is inclusive. So I would love to see a society where people understand special needs children. Like if Usha travels to Dubai, she's treated very differently. She walks on the street. Ultimately, you need a society which treats them as individual. They are able to do their own task independently. So if you're looking at a society and a change in society, then you build all capacities. Government, policymakers, thinkers, administrators, teachers, society at
And
large.
people as well,
Yeah.
the general people. I think that's the most important part where
we,
awareness is
we
required.
don't have, I've never seen Bushra going independently out. We
Yeah,
don't have
the
ramps. We don't
infrastructure.
have, She can never go to a park and enjoy like normal people. Whereas in other countries you can do that. So we need to work towards that.
Right.
Now we are trying to make all our policies, like if you're building gardens now, we're making it compulsory to make ramps. So this is a small step, but it has to go keep
Yeah, I
improving.
think it's a great start, but we have a long way to make our societies more accessible for everybody, right? And I want to know from you, you are in a unique position of like where you are trying to drive a systemic change while being inside the system. Like being outside the system, it's very easy to criticize and say, "Okay, oh, this is not something right, or this is not done uh, correctly." But you're inside the system and doing this. How do you navigate the the whole thing? And I am assuming there'll be tensions around uh, like people, like you have to explain it to your colleagues or people working with you in different systemic things. How do you navigate those situations?
See, I clearly feel that all are sensitive. It's just that society is not pushing it enough. See, politicians listen to only things which is pushed.
Mhm.
Lot of senior politicians have been asking me to give time and bring them to Marajab or EIC. It's just that this doesn't become the priority because the country's priorities are large. We are a developing country. We don't have those many resources. So yes, you have to keep talking about it wherever you get a chance to. And if you make this as a central theme of your life, then it's easier. I went to the education department to speak about teachers and principals. At the end of the day, my conversation was how to make it inclusive, what policies BMC is making, when is the training. So these are the things. Like now, I want to build 2 more EICs. So I keep pushing it. I keep calling up. I keep telling them where is the land, how to do it. So each time we try to do it, like a week back, there is 5% budget in every ULC, which is the urban local body, like the BMC for handicapped people. So now we are trying to, tell them to create permanent assets rather than giving handouts. We're telling them to make therapy centers, employ therapists. So these are constant efforts that we make. But again, I'm saying, unless you reach out to the decision makers and make them, they all have a wish, but they don't know how to do it. So for that, you need much more awareness.
And I think the awareness, I just want to add to that because recently I spoke to someone and I was just talking about just basic statistics because now the most recent statistics for disability is that 1 in every 8 children has a disability. And that translates to 1 in every 8 adults. So, I mean, there's a couple of us in this room probably also who has disability, whether it's recognized, not recognized, visible, not visible. That's different. But that translates to about 50 million children with disability in India. That's a huge number. And I think people don't think of it like that, right? Because I think research has shown that in low and middle income countries, 10 to 15% of children have a disability. Because of the population that we have, that's a big number. But I don't think people actually see it like that because, like Rais bhai said, that in a country like ours, there are so many other challenges that, people are working around. It becomes hard to prioritize.
Well, I have a friend of mine, and I always used to think that why is he slow? Why can't he write? Why can't he keep a book and pen? So I was struggling, why this guy cannot keep a simple book and a pen and take down things? Why his anxiety is always high? Now with Bushra, I understand that, he has this disability and, that has made his life difficult.
Yeah.
He's not like a normal person. And intervention is very important.
Yeah.
If you're a child and your screening is done properly, if your parents know that this is a disability, if it is the right time, intervention takes place, then your need for special treatment really goes down. So, you're working in the school space. I'm working in the space where I feel that with the birth certificate, your screening should be done. You should get a certificate saying, okay, these are the problems that I have or my child has. And then you start working with very early.
I think it's very important to screen and identify early. But what is also important is early identification with early support. That really helps children. And because you talked about parents and caregivers, I feel often a lot of times, because I've also worked in this space, and a lot of times when I would have conversations with the caregivers and parents, and I would say, okay, you should maybe get your child, go for, go for an assessment and see if the child has any disability or maybe autism, learning disability or something. And they would start with mm, uh, getting very defensive about it. Ki our child, how dare you say something like that about our child? He's very normal. That's what usually parents would.
That's due to lack of awareness.
Yeah, because that's what the disability.
I know a person
Mhm.
who has disowned the child completely, not bringing them in public space. Okay, this is my child. So
Yeah.
these are custom and uh, what do I say? These are society issues. These are customs. You know, parents who had special needs children were identified differently. So that's on the back of the mind. So as society grows, as education grows, people will be very open about that. Like for me, from a very young age, Bushra goes in public events, she speaks. We've never taken, in fact, we've created an environment that she's has no problem. She's a normal child, and that's helped her being normal. In fact, she's more intelligent than a normal child. She's more independent. She cooks, she reads, she does everything on her own, and I'm very proud of my daughter.
She's a treat to be around. I've met with her on a couple of occasions, and she can entertain you to no end. So she's
You
an
know,
absolute
such children
treat.
now will become ambassadors.
Yeah.
Like she has changed a lot of mindset.
Yeah, but I think for Bushra to do that, it's a lot of your acceptance and giving those opportunities, like going out in public events and spaces. A lot of times I see, as you also shared, parents not doing that. If there's a child with disability, they'll put them in home and they'll say, oh, we will do everything for them, and they don't have to.
I
But
know
I
parents
want
who give.
your a message from you to the parents who have children with
I see.
disability.
In case of Bushra, it's really been her mother.
Mhm.
I was a support system. In fact, she changed her entire life for Bushra. So to the parents, I'm very clearly telling you that please don't be ashamed of your children. They are your children, and support them, make them individuals who can succeed in life. And there's so many examples. In fact, at the right time, at the right place, if I'm there, we'll legislate this and we'll make it compulsory for parents to do screening. I mean, that is what is the ultimate aim. So screening will be compulsory, and every parent should understand that their children are special. Allah's made everybody. I mean, you may have a very normal child, and then he goes into some bad habits.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
it's like normal children sometimes have a bigger headache than special children. So look at that way. You should be thankful to Lord Almighty that you have a child. And
So I think some part of that also, Tehzeem, comes with awareness, like Rais Bhai said, because I think there's still a lot of stigma attached to it. And I've been in so many school systems where when the teachers say something, parents will say, नहीं मेरा बच्चा तो एकदम ठीक है, घर में तो सब कुछ करता है, घर में तो ये सुनता है, घर में तो वो करता है. But I think some part of that doesn't come from parents not wanting to accept that there may be something amiss. We're also living in a system which is not equipped. So, from a parent's point of view, if you're going to a school and as a school system, you can't support my child, what am I going to do as an independent parent? Like Rais said, you can't even go to the park and have a good time. So, it's easier than to just say, listen, everything is okay and I'll manage, versus accepting that there's a disability.
And I see a lot of times schools also use this, like if as a parent I say, okay, yes, let's explore this, what this is, and get a official diagnosis for the child, then school also uses this as an excuse ki, oh, because your child is autistic or because your child has a learning disability, we are not capable enough to support the needs of the child, you should maybe send the child to a special school.
Yeah, and imagine that for a parent, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes these kids deserve to be as much as any other child deserves to be in a school system and in a regular school system. And if a school is saying we can't support, that's the whole thing. As a parent, I'm thinking, okay, then where am I going to go? Like, what am I going to do? So it is just easier than, and that's also perpetuates stigma, right? Because then parents don't talk about it. Then you don't get your kid out to a social event because you don't want people to see what's going on. So it is, I think these are complicated issues. It's not just about, one is about awareness, but it's about awareness, it's about systemic change, it's about, infrastructure, it's about everything coming together, and it'll take a while, but fingers crossed that we're
I,
on that pathway
I
already.
want to ask you one last question. Is if for a teacher, if they have a child who is very different and has maybe some specific needs in the classroom, how do they navigate this conversation with the parents? How do they start the conversation?
So
What do
I
they
think
say?
having conversation, period. When we're in school, I don't think a teacher ever calls a parent when there's good news. When you say, "Oh, we need to talk," I mean, and that could be within partners, it could be parent and child. The minute you say we need to talk, this conversation is going downhill. The same is true for schools, right? When teachers, or whether it's a PTM or they call you separately, now a lot of schools mask it because people have learned along the way, right? So they'll start with two, three good things, but then it just goes very quickly, disintegrates into everything your child is not doing well or correctly or should be doing better. Um, so I think sometimes it's just engaging in conversation right from the start, and to talk about what the child's strengths are. I think that oftentimes in trying to get children up to speed, we often ignore what they're good at and try and build that up. So that this whole strength space model that Ummeed does a whole lot, I think really needs to be done in school systems. It's not just about filling that gap. I think when we look at schools, and there's so much competition, there's so much going on, that everyone just wants to be one step ahead of everyone, which means that you're spending your life playing catch up. And I think we really have to move beyond playing catch up. You really need to, celebrate diversity, because this term has also, like inclusion, it's become like a buzz term that we need to celebrate diversity. No one really celebrates it. Like everyone is like, oh my God, like I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm different. Which is why people then don't talk about it. And when people don't talk about it, then awareness is not going to happen. So I think we need to start, doing things differently. Like in some of the schools that I went, when we were trying to document good inclusive practices, there were some schools that do circle time all the way up to grade 10. And all schools do it till second and third grade for language development. Uh, but the thing is, some schools were doing it up to grade 10 and talking about concerns that came up. So things like bullying, things about being different, things about gender, sexuality, things that don't get spoken about in regular mainstream academic curriculum. And then when you start talking about it, then children are being sensitized from the start, right? Then the burden is not on the parent or the teacher to sensitize this child. So the next generation will normalize some of these conversations, normalize the idea that, look, we're all different. We're all sitting here. We're all wearing different clothes. It's not like one is good or bad. It's just that we have different likes, dislikes, interests, and it's okay.
What really is underlying all of that is from, at least from my generation till my generation, was ki the metrics for achievement, right? The metrics for achievement for till my generation was ki after college you have to be either a doctor and engineer. That's, you've achieved something. If not a doctor and engineer, then maybe some lesser things. If you've gone into commerce, then a CA. If you've gone into arts, then maybe law or IAS, and something like that. And these were the few options that people would see as achievement. You have achieved something in life, right? But I see in today's generation, I see a huge gap there. That's not at all achievement right now. I see people like traveling and earning out of it, like being food bloggers, being travel vloggers, social media celebrities, like influencers, and earning money out of it and making career out of it. And that redefines the whole option of achievement, right? For, and that gives so many opportunities for children who may not be academically doing well, but gives them so many opportunities to do things. How do you both feel about that?
I think it's great. Like Ayan is a child who's not really necessarily very interested in academics, but he is really interested in music. And I think, the fact that he has an option to make a career in music is great. Versus it wasn't thought about. Like you said, the metrics were very like it's arts, commerce, or science, engineer, doctor, or teacher. I mean, it ended at that. Even that was an option, but it ended at that. There weren't so many. Now, I work with a lot of young people who want to be like, design managers, and she said that she very specifically, she said, I want to be a product designer. And I was also like asking, okay, what is this? And she's saying, I want to design shampoo bottles to make them better. And I'm like, wow, like amazing that you can make a career in that. But you can, so many parents in COVID were talking about the fact that children are on the internet a whole lot, and this whole thing of screen time. But the fact is that gaming is a career option now, which makes you a lot of money. So I think there are lots of opportunities that exist, which is great. We don't have to stick. I think we have to move away from traditional ideas of what were, because people are changing, generations are changing, opportunities are changing, and options are changing, and we really need to start, looking at what is out there, because there's a lot more that's possible than what was there when we were growing up.
Yeah, and does that give you also hope?
And I'm very happy with the new world order. This, dismantling of the conventional career options is going to help special needs children, because you don't need an academic degree now. You need skills. So that, of course, will help these children, I'm sure. And more and more I'm seeing, children now talking about offbeat careers. In fact, the skill university that the government of Maharashtra has now started also focuses on this aspect, that a child, whether it's a normal child or a special child, now to focus on few key areas of interest or expertise of the child. So that will in the long term help the child or a special need child, because now you don't need to know everything in the world. That concept of learning, that we were taught things which probably we'll never use in our life, but it's now come down to things which you need to know to be more successful. This environment certainly will help special needs children.
Great. Thank you so much, both of you. We'll do a short, like a rapid fire one word answers next segment. So for the rapid fire round, my first question is for you first, Shamin. If you had the superpower to change something, what would you change in the schools?
I think the superpower I want is to be invisible, so I can go and rewrite what's written there so that things can change accordingly.
Great. And what about you, sir?
No, I would change the infrastructure of the school.
Great. Okay, so my next question is one subject that you detested as a school kid that you did not like.
I never liked maths.
I was going to say, I can answer that very easily. Math.
Maths
Absolutely.
I loved maths. I don't know why, but I was not good at history kind of stuff, but I loved maths.
I wasn't good at anything particularly, but I didn't like math at all.
Okay. One misconception that people have about inclusion.
That it is sharing the same physical classroom space.
Yeah.
That it's difficult.
Okay, cool. One thing that you hate about your school days.
I mean, there are so many things. But, there was not a playground.
You had no playground. Okay. And you, Shamin?
That in the 10th grade, from the 7th grade onward up to 10th grade, it was only about ICSE, ICSE, ICSE.
Okay. One teacher you want to thank.
So actually, there is a teacher who I used to call Miss Mendonça, who is known as Miss Dias now. She was also the CEO of Muktangan a few years ago, and she's just retired. But I think she was just like a really gentle, amazing person. And in recent past, when I met her in the capacity of, work, she would always tell people, first I used to teach her, now she's teaching me. And I think just having teachers who are okay with sort of learning throughout their journey is...
Yes. What about
we
you,
have
sir?
we had this teacher called Malabar Wala. She used to teach me biology, and she, besides teaching biology, had pushed us to get into areas of social work or go out of the school and do extracurricular activities. So I think she's no more now, but she was very different in that years.
Okay. So my next question is, if what you're doing today, like being in the politics, if that was not what you're doing, what would your alternate career be? What's something you would be doing?
It's a very difficult question because I can't imagine doing anything else. I come from a space of public relations and advertising and mass communication, so probably I would be doing something like
Something related comes.
Be in politics.
You be in politics
I'm
and we
totally.
switch roles.
please welcome.
So now we'll move to the next segment, which is yes and no. I'll ask questions and you'll have to say either yes or no. Have you ever been mistreated in the classroom? Okay. And did you ever think uniforms made everyone feel equal? Is there a teacher you still hold a grudge against?
Ooh, many. Oh,
You
yes.
said okay. Were you ever told you asked too many questions?
No, because I didn't ask questions. Because the one or two times that you put down, then you just choose not to ask.
Okay, so my last question is, have you ever broken a rule to include someone or make someone feel included?
All the time.
Great. Thank you so
Continue to.
much, both of you, for
Thank you for
being here with
inviting
us
us.
today. It was
Thank you.
lovely talking to both of you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.